You...
This is my child?
He's mine.
Before we get into this story, if you believe love means nothing without courage, like this video, comment below, and subscribe because stories like this deserve to be heard. Because tonight's story is not just about love. It's about silence. It's about pride. It's about what happens when a powerful man fails the one woman who believed in him, and how fate forced him to face that failure in the most vulnerable room in America. Have you ever trusted someone with your heart, only to realize they didn't have the courage to protect it? Have you ever been underestimated because of your race, your background, your softness, your strength? Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong not because you lacked worth, but because you didn't fit someone else's image? Stay with me, because what happened in that delivery room in Atlanta changed everything. And before this story ends, you'll see how a woman everyone underestimated helped rebuild more than a broken heart. Grady Memorial Hospital, Atlanta, Georgia. Monitors beep in sharp rhythm. Nurses move with precision. A storm rages outside the glass windows overlooking the city skyline. But inside labor and delivery, the only thunder comes from pain and breath. Deep breath, Dr. Bennett, the nurse says gently. Dr. Zariah Bennett grips the bed rail with quiet determination. She is sweating, exhausted, her body shaking with effort. But even in labor, she carries herself with control. She does not scream. She does not beg. She breathes. She calculates. She protects. Because this isn't just about her. It's about the life she fought to keep safe. Contraction building, the nurse warns. Zariah nods, jaw tight. She is a respected physician in this very hospital known for maternal advocacy, known for fighting for women who felt invisible in medical spaces. Tonight, she is the patient, and she hates it. Another contraction hits. Her eyes close. A tear slips down her temple. She wipes it away before anyone notices. She has faced operating rooms, board meetings, donor panels, classrooms full of skeptical men who doubted her credentials. But nothing strips a woman down like childbirth. Another nurse checks the monitors. Dr. Whiteley is on his way. Someone says. Zariah barely registers the name. Her focus narrows to breath. Inhale. Exhale. Push. The door opens. A white coat steps in. Tall, controlled, calm. Dr. Ronan Whiteley. He doesn't look at the patient file first. He looks at the bed and freezes. The world inside him collapses in one silent second, because the woman in that bed is Zariah, older, fuller, radiant, even in pain, and heavily pregnant. For a heartbeat, he cannot move. The nurse looks up. Doctor. He swallows, straightens, forces air into his lungs. Professional, steady, composed. He steps forward. Good evening, he says, automatically. Zariah doesn't look up. The contraction is too strong. Vitals stable, the nurse reports. She's progressing quickly. Ronan approaches the bedside. He reads the chart. Dr. Zariah Bennett. Age, medical history. Emergency admission, no partner listed. His pulse slams against his ribs. He finally looks at her fully. The woman he loved. The woman he lost. The woman he failed. She opens her eyes. For a split second, she doesn't see him. Pain blurs everything. Doctor, she says breathlessly. How far? He answers, voice controlled. You're close. She freezes. That voice. Her head turns slowly. Her eyes lock onto his face. Time stops. The air in the room changes. Her pupils widen. No, not him. Not now. Not like this. The nurse continues talking. Unaware of the earthquake happening inches above her, Zariah stares at him. He looks different. Sharper jawline, more lines around his eyes. Authority settled into him. But it's him, Ronan, the billionaire heir, the man who stood silent while his family humiliated her, the man who let her walk away, the man who never came after her. Her breath stutters. Another contraction hits. She grips the rail harder. This cannot be happening. She is too exposed, too vulnerable, too open. Of all the hospitals in Atlanta, of all the doctors on call, it had to be him. Ronan forces himself into doctor mode. Focus on your breathing, he says gently. His voice betrays him. There is something under it. Shock, fear, recognition, regret. She hears it, and she hates that she still recognizes the softness in his tone. "Switch me," she whispers to the nurse. "I'm sorry?" The nurse asks. "I want another doctor." Her pride tries to rise. Another contraction steals the words from her mouth. The nurse shakes her head apologetically. He's the attending tonight. Ronan's hands tremble just slightly as he adjusts his gloves. He wants to say her name. He wants to ask 1,000 questions. He wants to know why she's here, why she never called, why she looks like she's been carrying the weight of the world alone. But he can't, not now. "Zariah," he says quietly. Her eyes flash. "Don't," she breathes. Another contraction builds. She squeezes her eyes shut. "Push, push, push." He steps closer. Instinct overriding history. "You're doing incredible," he says. She resents needing him, resents his steadiness, resents that he still sounds like home. He looks at her chart again. No partner listed, no emergency contact, except an aunt. His chest tightens. How long has she been alone? Why didn't he know? The contraction peaks. "Push," he instructs. She obeys. Their eyes meet again. So much unsaid between them. He sees the strength he always admired, the dignity, the refusal to crumble, and something else, loneliness. The baby crowns. The nurse encourages her. One more strong push. Zariah gathers everything she has left, everything she survived, everything she rebuilt, and pushes. A cry fills the room. Sharp, new, alive. Ronan catches the baby. For 1 second, he is not a billionaire heir, not a prestigious physician, not a son controlled by image. He is just a man holding life. He looks down, and his world fractures again. The baby's eyes blink open, gray-blue, the exact shade his mother used to boast about at galas. A small birthmark rests just beneath her left ear. The same place Ronan has one. The same place his grandfather had one. The same place Evelyn Whiteley once called a family trademark. The room goes quiet. The nurse smiles. Healthy baby girl. Ronan doesn't speak. He doesn't move. He stares. Zariah watches his face, sees the realization land, sees it travel through him. Shock, understanding, devastation. His jaw tightens. His breathing changes. He looks at the baby again, then slowly. At Zariah. Her expression is tired, guarded, prepared, as if she always knew this moment would come. He hands the baby to the nurse to clean, but his eyes never leave Zariah. His voice is barely above a whisper. "Zariah." Her throat tightens. He swallows hard. Years of silence press against his ribs. Years of pride. Years of regret. He looks back at the baby, then at her, and asks the question that splits the room open. Is she mine? The room does not breathe. Not the nurses. Not Ronan. Not Zariah. Even the newborn's soft cries seem distant compared to the weight of that question. Is she mine? Zariah studies his face. Not the billionaire heir. Not the respected attending physician. Not the Whiteley name that opens doors across Atlanta. She studies the man who once held her forehead against his and whispered that she was the only place he felt real. He looks terrified. Not of responsibility, of truth. Another nurse steps forward with the baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. "Mom, do you want to hold her?" Zariah nods. Her arms tremble as her daughter is placed against her chest. Instant calm, instant protection. The baby's tiny fingers curl into the fabric of her gown. Zariah exhales for what feels like the first time all night. Ronan watches. His chest tightens in a way no boardroom ever could. Because that baby has his eyes, his family's mark, his expression. The resemblance is not subtle. It is undeniable. He takes one step closer. "Answer me," he says quietly, not demanding, desperate. Zariah lifts her chin, even exhausted, even pale, even moments after giving birth. Her dignity is intact. "You didn't defend me," she says softly. The nurse glances between them, sensing tension but unsure of its shape. Ronan swallows. That's not what I asked. Her voice doesn't rise. It doesn't need to. You didn't defend me, she repeats. So what does the answer matter now? The words cut deeper than any accusation. Because she is not yelling. She is not blaming. She is stating a fact. Ronan's jaw tightens. I was trying to protect your image? She interrupts, still calm. Your donors? Your family? The nurse shifts awkwardly. Should I give you two a moment? Zariah nods. The staff quietly exit, leaving the door slightly open. Now it is just them, and the child, and years of unfinished truth. Ronan steps closer to the bed. He cannot look away from the baby. She's mine, he says. Not a question now, a realization. Zariah doesn't confirm it. She doesn't deny it. She simply holds her daughter tighter. She deserved peace, Zariah says. Ronan's throat tightens. What are you talking about? You remember that gala in Buckhead? She asks. The one where your mother introduced me as a temporary distraction? His face hardens. He remembers. You remember how Camille laughed? She continues. How they told me I would never be fit for your world. He closes his eyes briefly. I told them that was wrong. You told them privately. She corrects gently. After. Not when it mattered. Silence fills the room again. Because she's right. He had pulled his mother aside later. He had said something quiet and controlled. He had avoided confrontation. He had told himself he would fix it over time. But in the moment, she needed him. He hesitated. And hesitation cost everything. You left, he says. You let me, she replies. Her eyes finally soften, just slightly. I walked away with what little self-respect I had left. Ronan runs a hand down his face. You think I didn't look for you? She blinks. You think I didn't try to reach you? Her brows pull together. What do you mean? He steps closer, lowering his voice. I came to your apartment 3 times. Her heart stutters. You were gone. I never moved, she says. I left messages. I never received any. Both of them freeze. The air shifts. Not anger now. Confusion. Ronan's mind races. I asked Camille for your updated number. Zariah's stomach tightens. She said, you changed it. I didn't. Silence. Heavy. Realization creeping in from the edges. Power dynamics. Family control. Influence. Disguised as protection. Ronan's breathing changes. What about the charity dinner? He asks, suddenly. The one where you arrived with that man? Zariah stares at him. What man? The investor. You were on his arm. She lets out a hollow laugh. That was the hospital's lead donor. He was 72. Ronan's chest feels like it's collapsing. That night, he says slowly, my mother told me you'd already aligned yourself elsewhere. Zariah's eyes darken. She told me you were engaged. Ronan's head snaps up. I was never engaged. She showed me a ring, Zariah whispers. He shakes his head. That was for a fundraiser auction. The pieces begin clicking into place. Not accident. Not miscommunication. Manipulation. Controlled narratives. Polished lies. Ronan takes a step back, as if the room has tilted. You think they... I know they, Zariah says quietly. Because she lived the humiliation. She felt the intentional isolation. She saw the smiles that concealed dismissal. But even now, she doesn't look vindictive. She looks tired. Ronan looks at his daughter again. His daughter. He says the words in his head and nearly breaks. How long? He asks. 9 months, she replies. And you never thought I deserved to know? Her eyes flash. Deserved? The word hangs between them. You didn't fight for me, she says. Why would I drag a child into that battlefield? His hands curl into fists. She's my child. She's my protection, Zariah answers. There it is, the core of it. Not revenge, protection, from old money politics, from image control, from subtle cruelty, from being raised in rooms that question her worth. I would never let them touch her, Ronan says fiercely. You already let them touch me. The words land without volume, but they land hard. Ronan cannot argue that, because she's right. He did not shield her. He believed he could manage his family quietly. He believed Love would survive pressure. He was wrong. He steps closer again, voice breaking now. I didn't know, he says. Her expression softens just enough to show something still alive beneath the guard. I know you didn't know, she whispers, and that's what hurts. Because if he had known, would he have chosen differently? Or would he have hesitated again? The baby stirs. Tiny eyes blink open. Ronan watches in awe. She looks like you, he says gently. Zariah smiles faintly. She looks like us. The word hangs. Us. Ronan's voice drops to a whisper. What's her name? Zariah hesitates. Eden. He inhales sharply, whitely. He asks carefully. She holds his gaze. Bennett. He nods once, not angry, not defensive, just absorbing the consequences of years lost. Does she know? He asks softly. She's 10 minutes old, Zariah replies, almost amused despite herself. He exhales a shaky breath. Does anyone else know? My aunt. Why not me? She studies him carefully. Because when a woman feels invisible long enough, she learns how to disappear quietly. That line lands like truth, because everyone has felt invisible at some point, undervalued, underestimated, dismissed, and when that invisibility comes wrapped in race, class, and gender expectations, it scars deeper. Ronan kneels beside the hospital bed. He has never knelt in front of anyone publicly, but here, he doesn't care. I failed you, he says. Not polished, not rehearsed, not strategic, just honest. And she's the proof. Zariah's eyes shine, but she doesn't cry. I didn't want her growing up thinking love requires shrinking. He nods slowly. I understand that now. Outside the room, faint thunder rolls over Atlanta. Inside, something shifts. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but truth. And truth is heavier than pride. Ronan stands slowly. His eyes move between Zariah and Eden. He looks wrecked, humbled, changed in real time. But this isn't over, because the bigger explosion hasn't happened yet. He whispers one more question, his voice barely steady. Zariah, how long have I had a daughter I never knew existed? The question lingers, not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. How long have I had a daughter I never knew existed? Zariah adjusts Eden gently against her chest before answering. 273 days, she says calmly. Give or take. Ronan closes his eyes. That's not just time. That's ultrasounds, doctor appointments, morning sickness, cravings, fear, lonely nights, baby kicks, moments he should have been part of, moments he didn't even know were happening. His voice comes out strained. You carried her alone. I carried her protected. Zariah corrects. There's a difference. And he hears it. He looks at Eden again. She stretches slightly, her tiny face scrunching before settling back against Zariah's warmth. The resemblance is undeniable now. The shape of her mouth, the curve of her brow, the birthmark beneath her ear. Ronan feels something crack open inside him. Not pride, responsibility, and regret. I would have been there, he says quietly. Zariah watches him carefully. You weren't there when I needed you the first time. He nods. No defense left, no explanation sufficient. He reaches toward Eden instinctively, then stops. He doesn't assume permission. He waits. Zariah notices. That small shift matters. After a long pause, she lifts Eden slightly. You can hold her. His hands tremble as he takes his daughter for the first time. She's so small, so fragile, so completely unaware of the storm she was born into. He holds her awkwardly at first, then steadies. Eden's tiny fingers wrap around his thumb. That's it. That's the moment. Not the birth, not the resemblance, not the question. This connection, something ancient and undeniable moves through him. Zariah watches his face soften. She remembers that expression, the one he used to wear when he thought no one was watching, the version of him that wasn't performing. Hi, he whispers to Eden. His voice breaks on the word. He looks up at Zariah, eyes glassy but steady. You named her Eden. Yes. Why? Zariah's gaze drifts to her daughter. Because I wanted her first memory of this world to feel like something pure. Ronan swallows. And Bennett? She meets his eyes. She carries my strength first. There's no bitterness in it. Just clarity. Outside the door, footsteps approach. Aunt Denise's voice filters faintly through the hallway. Ronan hears it and stiffens slightly. Zariah notices. She doesn't trust you, Zariah says. She shouldn't, he replies honestly. A gentle knock. Aunt Denise enters slowly, eyes scanning the room with quiet assessment. She sees Ronan holding the baby. She sees Zariah's guarded posture. Her expression tightens, but she remains composed. So, she says calmly, I see introductions have been made. Ronan stands carefully, still holding Eden. Yes, ma'am. The respect in his tone isn't forced. It's earned. Aunt Denise steps closer. Her eyes linger on Eden's face, then on Ronan's. She doesn't comment on the resemblance. She doesn't need to. You planning on disappearing again? She asks him plainly. Zariah exhales softly. Aunt Denise never tiptoes. Ronan holds her gaze. No. Aunt Denise studies him longer than most men could tolerate. You sure? Yes, ma'am. Her jaw tightens slightly. Because my niece doesn't shrink for anybody. And neither will that baby. I know, he says quietly. Aunt Denise shifts her attention to Zariah. You all right, baby? Zariah nods. I'm fine. She's not fully fine, but she's steady. Aunt Denise moves closer to the bed, placing a protective hand on Zariah's shoulder. Ronan feels the weight of being the outsider now, and for the first time, he understands what that feels like. Not because of race, not because of background, but because he forfeited his place. He hands Eden back gently. Zariah receives her instinctively. Ronan steps back, unsure where he stands. Aunt Denise looks at him again. You got questions, she says. Yes, ma'am. Good. She pauses. Just make sure you're ready for the answers. The door closes softly behind her as she steps out to give them space again. Silence settles. Ronan exhales slowly. There's something else, he says. Zariah looks up. My mother called me 2 weeks ago. Her expression hardens slightly. She said she heard you were leading a maternal health initiative in South Atlanta. Zariah nods. She wanted to sponsor it. Zariah's eyes narrow. Why? That's what I asked. And, she said, optics matter. Zariah lets out a small, humorless breath. Of course they do. Ronan studies her face. They knew you were still in the city. Yes. And they never told me. No. The pieces lock into place again. Influence, control, narrative management. He feels anger rising, but not the explosive kind. The cold kind. The kind that demands action. Did you ever try to reach me? He asks, carefully. Zariah nods once. Once. His breath catches. When? The night I found out I was pregnant. He goes still. I drove to your family's estate in Buckhead. His stomach drops. I didn't want to talk to your mother. I wanted you. And? She told me you were away, that you were engaged, that I needed to move forward with dignity. Ronan's face drains of color. I was in the city that night. I know that now. He presses a hand to his forehead. She said you were emotional, that you needed closure. Zariah's laugh is soft and painful. I wasn't emotional, I was pregnant. The word hangs in the room. Pregnant, alone, turned away. Ronan's fists clench. She sent you away. Yes. And I believed her. Yes. Not shouted, not dramatic. Just truth. That's the real betrayal. Not just family cruelty, but his willingness to accept their version of her. I should have come after you, he says. You should have known me, she replies. That lands heavier. Because it's about trust, not just presence. You didn't believe I'd leave without explanation, she continues quietly. So when they told you I did, you accepted it. He nods slowly. I thought you chose peace. I did, she says, just not the kind you imagined. Eden shifts slightly in her arms. Zariah kisses her forehead instinctively. Ronan watches that small gesture with something like awe. You built a life, he says softly. Yes. Without me. Yes. Are you happy? She considers the question honestly. I'm whole, she says. It's not the same thing, but it's strong. He nods once. Does she know anything about me? Not yet. Will she? Zariah studies him. That depends. On what? On who you are now. That's the challenge, not the past. The present. Ronan steps closer again, his voice steadier now. I don't care about the Whiteley image anymore. She doesn't respond. I don't care about the donors. Still nothing. I care about her. That makes her look at him. And you? He adds quietly. Silence stretches. She doesn't lie. I never stopped loving you, she says softly. His breath catches, but love without courage is dangerous. He nods. I know that now. Thunder rolls again outside. The storm hasn't passed, but something inside this room has shifted. Not resolution, not forgiveness, but clarity. Ronan takes a slow breath. I'm not leaving, he says. Zariah's eyes search his. Don't say that because it sounds noble. I'm saying it because it's true. She holds his gaze. You'll have to prove that. I will. Eden lets out a tiny sound, somewhere between a sigh and a cry. Both of them look down at her at the same time. Their hands brush unintentionally. Electric, familiar, dangerous. Zariah pulls back first. We'll talk, she says. About everything. He nods. Yes. She shifts slightly against the pillows. You can't fix this with money. I know. You can't fix it with public gestures. I know. You fix it by showing up. His jaw tightens with resolve. Then, I'll show up. She studies him one last time. Exhausted. Protective. Open enough to listen. Closed enough to survive. Outside the room, the hospital hums with normal life. Inside, a billionaire heir stands humbled. A powerful black woman sits, holding her daughter. And between them lies years of silence, class tension, racial pressure, and a child who carries both their faces. Ronan looks at Eden again, then at Zariah, and says quietly, This isn't the end of our story, is it? Zariah doesn't answer immediately. She looks down at her daughter, then back at him. No, she says softly. It's the beginning of the truth. The door opens again. This time it isn't Aunt Denise. It's Nurse Tasha, young, observant, sharp. She steps in with a clipboard, then pauses mid-stride when she sees the expression on Ronan's face. Not doctor, not heir, not authority, something personal. She's worked enough shifts in labor and delivery to recognize tension that has nothing to do with contractions. Everything all right in here? She asks, carefully. Zariah nods before Ronan can speak. We're fine. Nurse Tasha glances between them. She notices the way Ronan stands too close. The way he keeps looking at the baby like he's memorizing her. The way Zariah's posture is protective, but not hostile. The resemblance doesn't go unnoticed. Tasha has seen Dr. Whiteley at hospital galas, charity events, leadership meetings. Those gray-blue eyes are distinctive. Her eyebrows lift slightly. Oh, she says softly. It isn't a question. It's recognition. Ronan straightens. Professional mask sliding back into place. Vitals. He asks. Tasha checks the monitor. Stable. Strong heart rate. Zariah exhales softly. Eden makes a tiny sound in her sleep. Tasha smiles at the baby. She's beautiful. She is, Ronan says automatically. His voice betrays something again. Tasha looks at him, then at Zariah, then back at him. Her silence is knowing. Hospital staff talk, not maliciously, but perceptively, and within hours, someone will connect the dots. Zariah sees it too. You should go, she says quietly to Ronan. He looks startled. I'm not leaving. I didn't say leave permanently, she replies. I said go. He understands. If he stays too long, whispers start immediately. Power dynamics inside institutions are subtle but sharp. A black female physician giving birth, a wealthy white attending, hovering too close. No partner listed. Baby with his features. Hospitals are ecosystems of perception. I'll check on you later, he says carefully. Through proper channels. Zariah nods. He hesitates before stepping away. Then, something shifts in him. He leans closer, lowering his voice so only she can hear. I'm not letting them control this again. Her eyes flicker. Make sure you're strong enough for that. He meets her gaze directly. I am. For the first time tonight, she sees something different in him, not just regret. Resolve. He walks toward the door. Before exiting, he turns back once more, looks at Eden, then at Zariah. No dramatic speech, just a silent promise, and then he leaves. The door clicks shut. Zariah exhales deeply. The room feels different without him, quieter, but heavier. Aunt Denise re-enters moments later. He gone? She asks. Yes. Denise studies her niece's face. You all right? Zariah looks down at Eden. I didn't expect that. No woman does, Denise replies. Life don't schedule healing neatly. Zariah almost smiles. He didn't know, she says softly. Denise nods once. That don't erase what happened. No. But it changes some things. Zariah stares at the wall for a long moment. His mother told him I left. She told me he was engaged. Denise's expression darkens. I knew something felt off. So did I, Zariah whispers. But I chose peace anyway. Denise pulls a chair closer to the bed. You chose protection. Zariah nods slowly. Her fingers trace Eden's tiny cheek. I will not let her grow up questioning her worth. Denise's voice softens. She won't. Not with you. Zariah closes her eyes briefly. She feels the exhaustion settling into her bones now that the adrenaline has passed. But beneath it, something else. Not hope. Not yet. But movement. Across the hospital, Ronan walks down the corridor in a daze. Doctors greet him. Nurses nod respectfully. He barely registers it. He enters his office and shuts the door firmly. His hands brace against the desk. A daughter. He has a daughter. He replays every memory. The gala, the conversation with his mother, Camille's smirk, the staged appearances, the intercepted calls. The night he convinced himself Zariah had chosen distance. He grabs his phone, scrolls, calls Camille. It rings once, twice. She answers smoothly. Ronan, this is unexpected. His voice is ice. Did you ever give Zariah my messages? A pause. What messages? The ones I left when she supposedly moved. Camille laughs lightly. Ronan, that was years ago. Answer the question. Silence. Then, you seemed ready to move on. That wasn't the question. Her tone tightens. You were under pressure. Answer it. Another pause. We handled things. The word lands wrong. Handled. Did you give her my messages? He repeats. No. The admission is quiet, casual, as if it was administrative. His chest tightens. You lied. We protected you. I didn't need protection. You needed direction. He hangs up, immediately calls his mother. Evelyn answers with her usual polished warmth. Ronan, you told Zariah I was engaged. Silence. Ronan, you told her I left the city. Ronan, you turned her away when she came to see me. Her voice cools. She was not suitable. She was pregnant. The silence that follows is longer this time. What? Evelyn whispers. She was pregnant. He repeats. You knew that? She asks sharply. No, he says through clenched teeth. Because you made sure I didn't. Evelyn's tone shifts from defensive to calculating. Is this confirmed? I just delivered my daughter. The word daughter cracks through the line like thunder. Evelyn goes very quiet. This is unfortunate timing, she says finally. Ronan laughs once, low, disbelieving. Unfortunate? This will complicate things. It already has. You don't understand the implications. I understand them perfectly. His voice lowers, controlled. You manipulated me. We guided you. You cost me my family. You still have your family. No, he says. I don't. He ends the call. For the first time in his life, he doesn't wait for her final word. He sinks into his chair, breathing heavily. Years of obedience fracture in one night. Back in the hospital room, Zariah drifts in and out of sleep. Eden rests peacefully. Aunt Denise keeps watch. There's a knock. Soft. Denise opens the door slightly. It's Dr. Leonard Hayes, senior attending. Just checking on our newest mom, he says kindly. He steps inside. His eyes pause briefly on Zariah, then on Eden, then flicker with understanding. Whiteley delivered? He asks, casually. Yes, Denise replies. Leonard nods slowly. He doesn't comment further. But the shift in the hospital atmosphere has begun. When powerful men are connected to quiet stories, institutions adjust quickly. Leonard looks at Zariah gently. You have support? Yes, Denise answers firmly. Good. He lingers a moment, then adds softly, whatever happens next, protect your peace. Zariah nods faintly. After he leaves, Denise sighs. It's starting. What is? Zariah murmurs. Movement. Zariah looks down at her daughter again. She doesn't fear gossip. She fears instability. But something in Ronan's eyes tonight felt different. Not performance, not damage control. Change. Still, she has learned something important in life. Love without action is noise, and she will not expose Eden to noise. She whispers softly to her daughter. You are not a secret. You are not a scandal. You are not an apology. Eden stirs. Outside, the storm begins to calm. Inside, the consequences begin to rise. Because tomorrow, Atlanta's most respected hospital will quietly know that Dr. Ronan Whiteley has a daughter. Tomorrow, his old money family will begin calculating. Tomorrow, donors will whisper. Tomorrow, headlines may hover, but tonight, a woman who refused to shrink holds her child, and a man who once chose silence has finally chosen confrontation. The first explosion was recognition. The second was truth. And what comes next will test whether courage can rebuild what pride destroyed. 48 hours before the delivery room. Atlanta, Georgia, South Side. The air smells like rain and barbecue smoke drifting from somewhere down the block. Inside a brick community health center tucked between a church and a small grocery store, Dr. Zariah Bennett stands in a hallway filled with folding chairs, strollers, and mothers waiting patiently for appointments. She moves through the space like she belongs there. Because she does. Ms. Carter, she calls gently. You're next. A young woman stands slowly, nervous. Is the baby okay? She asks immediately. Zariah smiles softly. Let's go make sure. Her tone is steady, grounded, safe. This is how she rebuilt her life. Not loudly, not with spectacle, with service. Inside the exam room, she kneels slightly so she's eye level with the toddler clinging to her mother's leg. Hey there, she says warmly. I heard you've been giving your mama a little scare. The child blinks at her. Zariah doesn't rush. She never rushes. She knows what it feels like to sit in rooms where people talk over you. She knows what it feels like to be dismissed. So she listens. And that's why people trust her. After the appointment ends, Miss Carter squeezes her hand. Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Zariah nods. You're doing great. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. The words are simple, but she means them. Because she once doubted herself too. Later that afternoon, Zariah sits at her desk reviewing charts when her assistant, Marisol, peeks in. You need to rest, Marisol says, eyeing her growing belly. I will, Zariah replies calmly. You say that every day. I mean it every day. Marisol rolls her eyes affectionately. You're 8 months pregnant. 8.5. Exactly. Zariah smiles faintly. Despite the exhaustion, she feels purposeful, grounded, whole, not untouched by pain, but no longer defined by it. Her phone buzzes softly on the desk. Unknown number. She ignores it. Her piece is curated carefully. Disruption doesn't get easy access. That evening, she pulls into her aunt's driveway. A familiar house, cream siding, warm porch light glowing before sunset. Family cars line the curb. Laughter spills through the open windows. She exhales before stepping out of her car. This is home. Inside, Aunt Denise is stirring something on the stove. You late, Denise calls out. I was working, Zariah replies. You always working. Cousin Nia appears from the living room, dramatically eyeing her belly. That baby better come out with a degree already. Zariah laughs, softly. She's coming out healthy. That's enough. Nia grins. You sure it's a she? Zoraya places a protective hand over her stomach. I'm sure. Denise watches her closely. You still not calling him? The room quiets slightly. Zoraya doesn't flinch. No. Even now? Especially now. Nia sits beside her on the couch. You loved him. Yes. And love without courage is unstable. Denise nods slowly. You still love him? Zoraya doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she looks toward the kitchen window, where the last light of day fades. I love who he was with me, she says finally. Not defensive, just honest. And who he is now? Nia asks. I don't know who that is. That's the truth. She hasn't allowed herself to keep track. Social pages muted. Gala headlines ignored. Hospital board announcements scrolled past without clicking, because healing sometimes requires selective blindness. The next morning, Zoraya stands in front of a small crowd inside the community center's auditorium. Mothers, nurses, volunteers. A banner behind her reads, Mothers First, Equity in Maternal Care. She grips the microphone gently. I know what it feels like to walk into a hospital and feel small. She begins. The room quiets. I know what it feels like to be spoken over, to have your pain minimized, to be told you're overreacting. A few women nod immediately. Zoraya continues, but your body is not a negotiation. Your life is not a statistic. Applause rises softly. She doesn't speak from theory. She speaks from experience, from watching women dismissed, from watching mothers afraid to question authority, from remembering what it felt like to sit in rooms where her presence was tolerated but not embraced. She finishes the speech with calm conviction. You deserve doctors who see you. As the crowd disperses, a young volunteer approaches her. Dr. Bennett, how do you stay so strong? Zoraya smiles gently. I don't stay strong, she says. I stay rooted. That's the difference. Strength can feel like pressure. Roots feel like stability. Later that day, she drives through Buckhead for a hospital committee meeting. Glass towers, luxury storefronts, quiet wealth. Her jaw tightens slightly. She hasn't spent much time in this part of Atlanta in years, not since. She stops the thought. The hospital's executive wing is polished and cool. She signs in at the front desk. The receptionist glances at her belly and smiles. Congratulations. Thank you. Zoraya heads toward the conference room. Inside, executives sit around a long table, mostly older white men, a few women, polished suits, controlled expressions. She takes her seat. As the only black woman physician in the room, she's used to this. One of the board members clears his throat. Dr. Bennett, we've reviewed your maternal outreach proposal. And it's ambitious. That's the point. A few exchanged looks. The funding allocation is significant. So is the mortality rate in underserved communities, she replies evenly. Silence. She holds their gaze. Not aggressive. Not defensive. Steady. One of the younger board members shifts. We're not questioning the data. Then what are you questioning? She asks calmly. Her presence fills the space without volume. Power doesn't need to shout. After a long pause, the chair nods. We'll approve phase 1. Zoraya nods once. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. As she exits the building, she doesn't notice the black SUV parked across the street. She doesn't see the driver inside glance up from his phone. She doesn't know that a philanthropic sponsor has been reviewing her initiative quietly. She doesn't know that her name has been mentioned recently in rooms she once walked away from. That night, at home, she folds tiny baby clothes, pink and cream, soft cotton, simple. She pauses mid-fold when she finds an old hospital ID badge tucked inside a drawer. Her younger face smiles up at her. Next to her in the photo, Ronan. She stares at it. Her thumb brushes over the image. She remembers the cafeteria laughter, the late-night study sessions, the parking lot conversations neither of them wanted to end, the way he used to fix her coat collar gently before stepping into public events. She remembers the softness in him, the vulnerability. She also remembers the gala, the humiliation, the silence. Her jaw tightens. She places the ID badge back in the drawer, closes it firmly. Some doors stay closed for a reason. She lies down carefully. Eden kicks softly inside her. Zoraya smiles. You and me, she whispers. That's enough. Her phone buzzes again. Unknown number. She ignores it. Across the city, in a luxury high-rise apartment overlooking Midtown, Ronan whitely scrolls through a hospital briefing file. He pauses when he sees her name, Dr. Zariah Bennett, Maternal Equity Initiative. His thumb hovers over the screen. He hasn't seen her in years, but her name still hits the same. He stares at the city lights outside his window, unaware that in less than 48 hours, he won't just see her name. He'll see her, in the most vulnerable room in the hospital, carrying his child, and that is how fate positioned them. Not through coincidence, not through romance, through consequence. The next chapter of this story doesn't begin in the delivery room. It begins years earlier, when two people believed love would be enough. Before she was a doctor, before she was a mother, before she was the woman who walked away from old money and kept her dignity intact. Zariah Bennett was a girl raised where love was loud, faith was firm, and worth was never up for negotiation. Atlanta, Georgia. Southwest Side. Saturdays meant folding chairs in driveways, uncles arguing over football, aunties correcting children with one raised eyebrow, music spilling from speakers, and someone always guarding the grill like it was a sacred responsibility. Zariah grew up in that rhythm. She grew up where women wore pressed dresses to church and perfume that lingered in pews long after service ended, where elders didn't just hug you, they prayed over you, where mistakes were corrected, not discarded. Hold your shoulders back, her grandmother used to say. Nobody gets to make you smaller. That lesson stayed. She wasn't loud. She wasn't attention-seeking. She was observant. She watched people carefully, listened longer than she spoke, learned early that rooms reveal themselves when you're quiet enough. At school, teachers described her as disciplined. Classmates described her as calm, but what they didn't see was the steel underneath the softness. She studied hard because excellence was protection. She learned to articulate herself clearly because being misunderstood felt dangerous. She chose medicine not because it sounded impressive, but because she hated watching people feel powerless in rooms where decisions were made over their bodies. Her mother worked double shifts for years. Zariah remembered sitting in emergency rooms as a teenager, watching nurses speak past women who didn't have insurance, watching doctors rush explanations, watching fear go unanswered. She made a promise to herself at 16. If she ever wore a white coat, she would never let anyone feel invisible in front of her. And she kept that promise. Medical school wasn't gentle. There were rooms where she was the only black woman, rooms where her confidence was mistaken for attitude, rooms where her calm responses were interpreted as indifference. One attending once said, "You're very articulate." She smiled politely. "Thank you." She understood what that sentence really meant. She never argued loudly. She proved herself quietly, graduated near the top of her class, earned respect not by demanding it, but by being undeniable. By the time she entered residency in Atlanta, she carried herself like a woman who knew exactly who she was: warm, sharp, unshaken. But even strong women carry softness somewhere, and that softness had never truly been tested. Until she met him. It wasn't dramatic, no fireworks, no cinematic collision, just a hospital corridor. She was reviewing patient notes while walking, almost collided with someone turning the corner too fast. "Sorry," she said automatically. "No, that was my fault." She looked up. Tall, controlled posture. Sharp suit beneath a white coat. Composed in a way that felt practiced. Dr. Ronan Whiteley. Even before she knew his last name carried legacy, she could sense something different about him. Not arrogance. Restraint. He looked at her longer than necessary, not in a way that felt invasive. Curious. She stepped aside first. He didn't move immediately. That was the first thing she noticed. He wasn't rushing. Most people in hospitals rushed. He didn't. "Dr. Bennett," he said after glancing at her badge. Dr. Whiteley. There was a pause, not awkward, just charged with awareness. He walked away first. She continued down the hall. Neither of them realized that small moment would matter later. They crossed paths again days later in the cafeteria. She was eating alone, reviewing a research article between bites. He approached with a tray. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up calmly. No. He sat. No grand introduction. No immediate flirting. They talked about patient loads, residency, exhaustion, coffee quality in hospital cafeterias. Then the conversation shifted. You stayed in Atlanta for residency? He asked. Yes. Family here? Yes. He nodded thoughtfully. I didn't. Where are you from? She asked. Mostly New York. Some Connecticut. Boarding schools. She raised an eyebrow slightly. That sounds expensive. He smiled faintly. It was. She noticed something then. A crack in the polish. He wasn't bragging. He was stating a fact. They talked longer than either expected. When she stood to leave, he surprised her. You're different. She tilted her head. How? You listen before you respond. She considered that. Most people don't. He shook his head lightly. No. And that was how it began. Not through fireworks. Through understanding. Weeks passed. They worked overlapping shifts. Shared patient consults. Argued respectfully about treatment plans. He noticed how she stayed an extra 5 minutes with anxious mothers. She noticed how he double-checked charts even when exhausted. He began bringing her coffee. She pretended not to expect it. Late-night parking lot conversations became routine. He opened up slowly, about pressure, about expectations, about never quite feeling like he was enough unless he achieved something. She listened without judgment. You don't have to perform with me, she told him once. He looked at her like she'd said something revolutionary. Because, in his world, everything was performance. With her, it wasn't. That frightened him, and grounded him at the same time. Their first almost kiss happened after a brutal shift. They were both leaning against her car, too tired to drive. He reached up and brushed a stray curl from her forehead. It was instinctive, soft. She froze. He froze. The air changed. You don't have to fix everything, she murmured. I know, he said quietly. But he wanted to. He leaned closer. Foreheads touching, breathing shared. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It felt earned. Their first real kiss came weeks later. After laughter, after trust, after slow build. It felt less like excitement and more like surrender. She became the only place he didn't feel measured. He became the only place she allowed herself to be fully vulnerable. And that's what made it dangerous, because love is beautiful. But when it crosses race, class, and legacy lines, it threatens systems. And systems defend themselves. He invited her to a Whiteley charity gala 3 months later. Buckhead mansion, crystal glasses, polished laughter, quiet judgment dressed in elegance. She wore a deep emerald dress, graceful, confident. She didn't shrink. She never did. His mother, Evelyn Whiteley, noticed immediately. The glance lasted too long. The smile was too tight. Introductions were made. Dr. Bennett, Evelyn said smoothly. How refreshing. Zariah returned the smile politely. Mrs. Whiteley. She felt the assessment. Measured, catalogued, dismissed. Camille joined shortly after. Beautiful. Controlled. Eyes sharp with calculation. Oh. Camille said lightly. You're the resident. The word was emphasized. Temporary. Zariah held her ground. Yes. And what are your long-term goals? Camille asked. Zariah answered calmly. To serve communities that need stronger maternal care. Camille smiled. How noble. Not admiration. Mockery. Ronan squeezed Zariah's hand subtly. A silent apology. She noticed. But she also noticed something else. He didn't challenge them. He didn't correct the tone. He didn't shut it down. He waited. And in waiting, he signaled hesitation. That was the first fracture. Not loud. Not explosive. Just a hairline crack. Zariah felt it. But she didn't leave. Not yet. Because love deserves a chance. Even when the room feels hostile. Back in the present hospital bed, she would later think about that night. The moment she realized she was stepping into a world that did not want her fully. But 48 hours before labor. She wasn't thinking about that. She was folding baby clothes. Reviewing patient charts. Building initiatives. Grounded in family. Rooted in faith. Strong in identity. She had no idea that the man who once hesitated in front of his family would soon be standing in front of her again, holding their daughter, forced to choose differently. This was Zariah before the wound reopened, whole, dignified, unapologetic, a woman who never needed saving, only defending, long before he stood in that delivery room, long before he held his daughter for the first time, long before regret finally outweighed pride. Ronan Whiteley was a son trained to maintain legacy, not protect love. New York, Connecticut, Manhattan galas. Ronan grew up in rooms where conversations were quieter than knives, where smiles meant negotiation, where generosity was photographed, where charity events were less about giving and more about visibility. He learned early that posture mattered, silence mattered, timing mattered. Emotion is leverage, his grandfather once told him. Never give anyone leverage. So Ronan became controlled, measured, careful with his words, careful with his expressions, careful with what he revealed. His childhood wasn't abusive. It was polished, which can be worse. There were no screaming matches, just expectations, no slamming doors, just disappointment, delivered in calm voices. You represent the Whiteley name, his mother would remind him. That sentence shaped everything. He attended private schools where wealth was assumed. He wore tailored suits before he turned 18. He learned how to enter rooms and make investors comfortable. He also learned how to suppress discomfort, because vulnerability was not encouraged. It was tolerated only when it served strategy. Medicine was the only decision he made for himself. Partly, his family had foundations tied to healthcare systems, hospitals, with their name engraved in marble. So yes, it aligned with legacy, but the desire to heal, that was his. He liked precision. He liked problem solving. He liked that medicine required competence, not charm, but even there, he carried the weight of performance. In medical school, he was admired quickly, confident, sharp, charismatic without trying. He could speak in donor meetings and in trauma units without shifting tone. But what few noticed was that he rarely spoke about himself. He asked questions, deflected praise, redirected attention, because somewhere deep down, he feared that if anyone looked too closely, they'd see how uncertain he actually felt. The first time he noticed Zariah Bennett in the hospital corridor, he felt something unfamiliar. Stillness. She didn't rush. She didn't posture. She didn't seek validation. She existed in rooms like she had every right to. That unsettled him. In his world, everyone sought approval. From donors, from boards, from parents, from press. She didn't. She carried her identity like it was already confirmed. That was new. That was dangerous. Because when you're raised in environments where love must be earned, someone who loves freely feels destabilizing. He watched her quietly before he ever approached her again. He saw the way she spoke to janitorial staff, with the same respect she used with surgeons. He saw how mothers relaxed when she entered exam rooms. He saw how she never tried to impress anyone in executive meetings. She didn't shrink. She didn't perform. She didn't seek his name. She didn't seem particularly impressed by it. That fascinated him, because most people were. He tested her once. "Do you know who my family is?" he asked casually over coffee. She sipped calmly. "Yes." And what?" He waited. She didn't elaborate. He almost laughed. "That doesn't intimidate you?" "No." He leaned back slightly. "Why not?" She looked at him evenly. Legacy isn't personality. He didn't know whether to feel challenged or relieved, maybe both. Their relationship grew in quiet pockets of the hospital. Late-night consults, shared cafeteria dinners, long discussions about policy gaps in maternal care. She sharpened him, not with criticism, with honesty. "You don't have to be perfect," she told him once, in the parking garage. He frowned slightly. "I'm not trying to be." She tilted her head. "You are." He didn't argue, because she was right. With her, he didn't feel like the Whiteley heir. He felt like Ronan. That was addictive. The first time he brought her to a family function, he told himself he was ready. He underestimated the resistance. His mother's glance was subtle but sharp. Camille's comments were dressed in politeness but loaded with dismissal. Zariah handled it with grace. That impressed him. But something else happened in that room. He hesitated. Not visibly, not loudly, but internally. When Camille reduced her accomplishments to community enthusiasm, he felt anger rise. But instead of correcting her publicly, he squeezed Zariah's hand, a private reassurance. That was his mistake. He thought private correction was enough. In his world, confrontation happened quietly, behind closed doors, controlled, strategic, but in hers, respect needed to be visible. And that's what he failed to understand. The pressure escalated over weeks. Subtle comments turned pointed. Dinner invitations became strategic. His mother began introducing him to appropriate women at charity events. "It's good for optics," she would say. He dismissed it at first. Zariah noticed. She never accused. She observed. That made it worse, because silence in a strong woman means she's calculating. One evening, after another tense dinner in Buckhead, she asked him directly, "Are you defending us or managing them?" The question stayed with him. He didn't answer properly, because he wasn't sure. He believed he could navigate both worlds, maintain family stability, maintain love, avoid public conflict. He believed diplomacy was strength. He was wrong. The gala was the turning point. Crystal chandeliers, polished speeches, donors circulating with quiet agendas. His mother cornered Zariah in a side room. Camille stood beside her. By the time Ronan reached them, the damage was already done. Zariah's posture was composed. Too composed. Evelyn's smile was thin. "We were just discussing suitability," his mother said lightly. Zariah looked at him, not angry, not crying, waiting. He felt heat in his chest. He should have shut it down publicly, should have said, "She is not temporary. She is not unsuitable. She is not a negotiation." Instead, he said, "We'll discuss this later." 3 words. Controlled, calm, devastating. Because later signals hesitation, and hesitation signals doubt. Zariah didn't argue. She nodded once, and something in her eyes changed. Not dramatic, just distant. The misunderstandings that followed were not accidental. But he didn't know that then. His mother fed him narratives carefully. She's emotional. She's aligning herself strategically. She left without explanation. Camille reinforced it. She deserves someone more aligned with her background. They framed it as protection, as image preservation, as guidance. He believed some of it, because part of him feared they were right, not about her worth, but about the cost. He feared losing legacy, feared fracturing family bonds, feared public conflict. He told himself he would repair things privately, that he would speak to Zariah directly, that he would clear confusion. But every day he delayed. The gap widened, until she walked away, and he let her, not because he didn't love her, because he lacked courage at the right moment. He told himself she chose distance. He convinced himself she wanted freedom. It was easier than admitting he failed her. After she disappeared, he searched briefly, then stopped, because pride filled the silence. If she wanted him, she would call. If she valued them, she wouldn't leave. That's what he told himself. He didn't know she had tried, didn't know she had come to the estate, didn't know she had been turned away. He didn't know she was carrying his child. He threw himself into work, expanded hospital influence, secured donor partnerships, increased visibility. On paper, he was thriving. Privately, he felt hollow. He avoided serious relationships, dated casually, never committed, because no one felt like her. He told himself, it was maturity, it was fear. And then, 48 hours ago, he saw her name in a hospital initiative report. Dr. Zariah Bennett, maternal equity. He stared at it longer than necessary, considered reaching out, didn't, because some habits die slowly. And then, 2 nights later, he walked into a delivery room and found out silence had consequences. Consequences with gray-blue eyes. Ronan was not cruel. He was conditioned, not malicious, but cautious to a fault, raised to preserve image before confronting injustice. And now, that upbringing was standing face to face with a woman who never needed image, only protection. In that delivery room, holding Eden for the first time, he finally understood something. Love doesn't fail quietly. It fails in the moments you choose comfort over courage. And now, he had one chance to choose differently. Before the humiliation, before the lies, before the separation, there was a dinner. Not the kind with shouting, not the kind with slammed doors, the kind that looks civilized, which is worse. Whiteley Estate, Buckhead, Atlanta. The house sat behind iron gates and perfectly trimmed hedges. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, tall windows, portraits of past Whiteley men staring down like silent judges. Zariah stood beside Ronan at the entrance. She wore navy silk. Simple, elegant, intentional. She did not try to outshine the room. She refused to shrink for it. "You don't have to do this," Ronan murmured softly beside her. She looked at him. "I'm not afraid of dinner." He believed her. That was the problem. He underestimated the strategy behind it. The dining room table could seat 16. Tonight, only 8 chairs were occupied. Evelyn Whiteley sat at the head, Camille on her right, 2 donors, a distant cousin, and Ronan and Zariah seated across from Evelyn. The air was cool, controlled, measured, wine poured, plates served, conversation light. At first, healthcare funding, hospital expansion, market shifts. Zariah spoke when addressed. Confidently, intelligently. One donor leaned forward. "Dr. Bennett, I hear you're pushing for increased funding toward maternal mortality prevention in underserved communities." "Yes," she replied evenly. "That's admirable. It's necessary." The donor smiled politely. Evelyn's eyes narrowed just slightly. "And costly," Evelyn added. Zariah turned her gaze calmly toward her. "Lives usually are." A beat of silence. Not confrontation, not insult. Just truth. Camille tilted her head. "You're very passionate." Zariah didn't miss the tone. "I am. And where do you see yourself long term?" Camille asked. "In medicine." Camille smiled faintly. "Of course." The word carried weight. "Of course. As in, that's where you belong. Not here. Not among legacy. Not in influence." Ronan felt tension building. He should have redirected. Should have stepped in. He waited. Again. That waiting would cost him. Midway through dinner, Evelyn set her fork down delicately. "Ronan," she said lightly, "have you given thought to the Harrington partnership?" Zariah remained still. Ronan stiffened. "That's business." "It's personal when alignment is considered," Evelyn replied. Zariah met Ronan's eyes briefly. Harrington meant old money, old alliances, daughter included. Camille leaned back slightly. "The Harringtons are hosting their winter benefit next month. They specifically requested you attend." With a guest, Evelyn added. The implication hung. Zariah didn't flinch. She simply sipped her water. Ronan's jaw tightened. "I'm already attending." "With whom?" Evelyn asked smoothly. Silence. That was the test. That was the moment. Zariah watched him, not pleading, not demanding, waiting. If he said her name publicly clearly without hesitation, it would matter. He inhaled. "Zariah," he said. The name landed. Evelyn smiled, but not warmly. "Is that wise?" The room went still, not because of volume, because of insult. Zariah placed her glass down gently. "Wise in what sense?" she asked calmly. Evelyn folded her hands. "In the sense of positioning." Zariah didn't look away. "I'm not a position." Camille's lips curved faintly. "No one implied that." "You did," Zariah replied softly. The donors shifted slightly. Ronan felt heat rise in his chest. He should have ended it there. Should have said, "She is not up for debate." Instead, he said, "Let's not make this dramatic." 3 words. Careful, controlled, cowardly. Zariah's eyes changed. Not angry. Clear. Because she understood something in that second. He wasn't protecting her. He was protecting the atmosphere. And that realization felt colder than any insult. After dinner, Evelyn requested a private conversation. Just the women. Ronan hesitated. Zariah looked at him. "It's fine," she said. It wasn't. But she needed to see something clearly. Inside the sitting room, Evelyn closed the door. Camille remained standing by the fireplace. Evelyn sat gracefully. "Dr. Bennett," she began, voice polished. "You are accomplished. Thank you. But legacy requires compatibility beyond credentials." Zariah remained standing. "Compatibility with what?" "With expectation," Camille added smoothly. "The Whiteley name carries influence. Public perception matters." Zariah felt the undertone. Race, class, background, access. "Are you suggesting I lack something?" she asked. Evelyn smiled thinly. "I'm suggesting you lack understanding of scale." Zariah absorbed that. "And what exactly do you believe I don't understand?" Camille answered instead. "Rooms like this." There it was. Not shouted, not crude, but clear. "You don't belong." Zariah nodded slowly. "Then perhaps this isn't the room for me." Evelyn leaned forward. "You care for Ronan?" "Yes." "Then you should care about his trajectory." "I do." "Then step aside." Silence. The request wasn't emotional, it was strategic. Evelyn's eyes were steady. "You are temporary," she said quietly. "Be dignified about it." The words hit harder than any raised voice. Temporary. Zariah's spine straightened. "I'm not temporary," she replied calmly. Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "Everyone is." Zariah studied her, then said something that would echo later in Ronan's mind. "Not love." Camille laughed softly. "Love is a luxury in families like ours." Zariah finally understood. This wasn't about personality. It was about control. She walked toward the door without another word. She would not beg. She would not negotiate her worth. When she stepped back into the hallway, Ronan was waiting. He searched her face. "What happened?" She looked at him carefully. "Are you going to ask them publicly?" she asked. "Ask what?" "If I'm temporary." His face darkened. "That's not what they meant." "That's exactly what they meant." He exhaled. "Zariah." This was the moment. The exact one. He could have walked into the dining room, could have told his mother she was out of line, could have announced clearly that Zariah was his choice. Instead, he reached for her hand privately. "Let's talk about this tomorrow." There it was again. Tomorrow, not now, not here, not in front of witnesses. Zariah gently pulled her hand away. "I don't need tomorrow," she said. He frowned. "You're overreacting." Her expression cooled instantly. No, that word carried finality. "I'm observing." And what she observed was this: he loved her, but he was not ready to defend her in rooms that mattered. She walked out of the estate that night alone, not in tears, not screaming, walking, back straight, chin lifted, because dignity matters more than access. The next morning, she saw the Harrington event announcement online. Ronan listed as keynote guest, no +1 mentioned. Then she received a call from a colleague. "I saw Ronan last night," the colleague said casually. Looked like he was being introduced to the Harrington daughter. Zariah didn't react. She thanked the colleague and hung up. Later that afternoon, Camille sent her a message. "He's doing what's best." No explanation, no apology, just positioning. That was when something inside her settled. Not rage, not heartbreak. Clarity. She called Ronan. He didn't answer. He texted back, hours later. "Long day. We'll talk soon." Soon. Another delay. Another tomorrow. And sometimes, love dies not because of betrayal, but because of hesitation. That night, she packed a small box, returned the Whiteley family event badge, removed his spare key from her keychain. She didn't send a dramatic message. She sent a simple one. "I deserve someone who chooses me clearly." Then she turned off her phone, because peace sometimes requires silence. Back in the present delivery room, that night echoed differently, because now, she had not just walked away, she had walked away pregnant, and he had not just hesitated, he had lost years. The family war had not started with shouting. It started with one question at a dinner table. Is that wise? And his failure to answer it boldly. The war hadn't ended either. It had just shifted, because now, there was a child. And legacy doesn't just fight to preserve image. It fights to preserve control. Zariah didn't leave in anger. She left in clarity. There's a difference. Anger makes noise. Clarity makes decisions. And once she decided she would not compete with legacy, she stopped arguing with it. 2 days after the dinner at the Whiteley estate, Ronan showed up at her apartment, flowers in hand. Eyes tired. He knocked 3 times. No answer. Because she wasn't there. Not because she moved. Not because she disappeared. Because she had taken a weekend shift at the hospital. He left the flowers at the door. Then, he called. Her phone was off. He texted. No response. That night, he drove to Buckhead again. You said she left, he told his mother. She did, Evelyn replied calmly. She vacated her apartment. She's still working at the hospital. Evelyn paused. Then perhaps she didn't want to see you. He felt something sharp in his chest. You spoke to her? She came by. When? Yesterday. His heart dropped. What did she say? She said she needed distance. He swallowed. And you believed that? I don't believe anything, Evelyn replied. I observe. He felt anger rising. But he'd been trained not to erupt. You could have called me. She didn't want that. He hesitated, because part of him feared it might be true. Maybe she did want distance. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she saw how complicated his world was. And maybe she chose peace. That narrative felt safer than confrontation, so he accepted it. That was the second fracture. Not public this time. Internal. He let doubt replace direct conversation. What he didn't know. When Zariah drove to the estate that night, she was shaking. Not from weakness. From nerves. She had taken a pregnancy test that afternoon. Positive. She sat in her car for 20 minutes before going inside. She didn't want drama. She didn't want pleading. She wanted clarity. When the gate opened, and she stepped into the marble foyer, Evelyn greeted her alone. Ronan isn't here, Evelyn said smoothly. I need to speak to him. He's unavailable. It's important. Evelyn studied her carefully, then said the words that would reshape everything. He's engaged. The word struck like ice. Zariah blinked. Excuse me? To the Harrington daughter. It's appropriate. She felt her heartbeat shift. That's not possible. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. He chose stability. Zariah's hands trembled subtly. He would have told me. He didn't owe you that. The cruelty was controlled, measured, never loud. Is he here? Zariah asked again. He's in New York. That was a lie. He asked me to handle this delicately. Another lie. Zariah's throat tightened. She wanted to push past her, to demand proof, to shout, but she had been raised differently. Thank you for your time, she said instead. She walked out with dignity intact, but her world fractured silently. That same evening, Camille sent Ronan a message. She came by. His stomach tightened. What did she want? Closure. Where is she? She left. He stared at the screen. Did she say why? She said you made your choice. Ronan exhaled slowly. So that's it, he thought. She assumed he aligned with his family. She didn't fight for him either. That's how doubt works. It fills the gaps where communication should have lived. Over the next week, Evelyn and Camille reinforced the narrative carefully. She didn't attend her scheduled consult. She declined the Harrington invitation. She removed you from her social connections. All technically true, but missing context. Missing heart. Ronan called her apartment again. No answer. He asked Camille for her updated number. She changed it. Camille said. Another lie. He left messages with the front desk. Those messages never reached her, because Camille handled the estate's administrative staff personally. Influence doesn't need to shout. It redirects, quietly. Meanwhile, Zariah sat alone in her apartment, holding a sonogram printout. 6 weeks. Tiny flicker on the screen. She replayed the estate conversation over and over. Engaged. Chose stability. Handled delicately. She tried calling him once. His phone rang. Then voicemail. She hung up before speaking. If he wanted her, he would call back. He didn't, because he never saw the missed call. Camille had changed his phone routing during a board travel arrangement update. Messages filtered. Calls screened. He never knew. That's how power protects itself. Not loudly. Efficiently. 2 weeks passed. Zariah returned to work. Composed, professional, she didn't tell anyone. Not yet. She needed time. Her body was changing. Her heart already had. She drove past Buckhead once, stopped at a red light near the estate, then turned left instead of right. That was the last time she went near that gate. She chose peace and protection. Ronan heard through hospital whispers that she requested a rotation shift. He interpreted it as distance. He didn't confront her, because confronting would mean admitting he cared more than pride allowed. And pride is expensive in old money families. He told himself she made her choice. She told herself he made his. Both wrong. Both misled. Neither aware. The Harrington winter benefit arrived. Ronan attended alone. No engagement announcement. No public alignment. But Camille-insured photographers captured him speaking beside the Harrington daughter briefly. Those images circulated. Zariah saw one. That was confirmation enough. She turned off her phone completely that night, and the next morning she called Aunt Denise. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Then, "Come home." That was it. No lecture, no panic, just shelter. Back in the present hospital room, that engineered silence felt heavier, because now there was proof of what interference costs. Ronan stood in his office replaying every moment from that year. Every time he chose patience over confrontation. Every time he believed a filtered version of events. He thought he was being diplomatic. He was being managed, and management destroyed love. He clenched his jaw. This wasn't just about reconciliation anymore. It was about truth and accountability, because legacy had intervened, and he allowed it. That was the part he couldn't escape. Manipulation explains confusion. It doesn't excuse hesitation. Back in her hospital bed, Zariah stared at Eden sleeping peacefully. "She won't inherit confusion," she whispered. Aunt Denise squeezed her hand. "She won't. But he needs to know everything," Zariah added softly. Denise nodded. "He does. And if he's still the same man, then you stay the same woman." That was the difference between them. She had grown through the pain. He had avoided it. Until tonight, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was engineered silence. It was influence applied strategically. It was legacy defending itself. And now, that legacy had a granddaughter it didn't account for. The question wasn't whether Ronan loved Zariah. He did. The question was whether he was finally strong enough to stand against the machinery that once controlled him. Because this time, he wasn't protecting a relationship. He was protecting a child, and children changed the stakes. When Zariah told Aunt Denise she was pregnant, she didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She didn't say, "Why me?" She said, "Okay." Because life doesn't always ask permission. Sometimes it simply arrives. Aunt Denise sat across from her at the kitchen table, hands folded. "You sure?" Denise asked gently. Zariah nodded once. "I took 3 tests." Denise inhaled slowly. "And him?" Zariah's gaze dropped briefly. "He's engaged." Denise didn't react dramatically. She studied her niece carefully. "You believe that?" "Yes." "And if he wasn't?" Zariah lifted her chin. "He didn't fight for me." Denise leaned back slightly. "So what are you choosing?" Zariah placed a steady hand over her stomach. "I'm choosing peace." Peace meant no estate visits, no confrontations, no pleading for access into rooms that had already dismissed her. It meant protecting her child from inherited humiliation. It meant standing firm in her own name. The first trimester was quiet. Morning sickness came without warning. Fatigue pressed into her bones. She worked through it, not recklessly, but intentionally, because medicine wasn't just her career. It was grounding. Every mother she helped reminded her she was not alone. Every baby she examined reminded her that vulnerability carries strength too. She told Marisol eventually. Marisol screamed, "You've been carrying this secret?" "I wasn't ready to speak it," Zariah said calmly. "Does he know?" "No." Marisol's expression tightened. "You don't think he deserves to?" Zariah didn't answer immediately. "Deserve is complicated," she said finally. Marisol didn't argue. She hugged her instead. Meanwhile, Ronan expanded hospital partnerships. Publicly, he was thriving. Internally, he avoided reflection. He dated briefly. Nothing serious, nothing deep. No one listened, like Zariah. No one challenged him calmly. No one saw through him. He buried himself in influence. Because grief is easier when masked as ambition. At 14 weeks, Zariah heard the heartbeat clearly for the first time. Strong, steady, rhythmic. She stared at the screen. Tears slid down silently. Not sadness, not joy, something in between. This child would not be raised in negotiation. She made that decision right there. After the appointment, she drove straight to church. Not for spectacle, for grounding. The sanctuary was empty, except for soft light filtering through stained glass. She sat in the second pew and whispered, "I don't know what this looks like yet, but I trust you more than I trust confusion." Faith didn't remove the ache, but it steadied it. Second trimester brought strength. Her energy returned. Her body changed visibly now. Hospital staff began congratulating her. "Who's the father?" Someone asked casually in the break room. She smiled politely. "Her name is Eden." It wasn't avoidance. It was redirection. Her story did not need public dissection. One afternoon, while reviewing maternal mortality data in her office, she felt the first kick. Small, surprising. She froze, then laughed softly. "You're strong," she whispered. That moment shifted something deeper. This wasn't loss. It was expansion. Back in Buckhead, Evelyn received a quiet report from hospital administrators. "Dr. Bennett is leading a maternal equity initiative," the report stated. Evelyn scanned it carefully. "She's visible," Camille observed. "Yes. Does Ronan know?" "Not yet." Evelyn folded the paper. "He doesn't need distractions." They didn't know she was pregnant, but they knew she was rising. And rising women disrupt old systems. At 22 weeks, Zariah sat with Aunt Denise on the porch swing. Summer air warm, cicadas humming softly. "You ever regret not telling him?" Denise asked gently. Zariah considered it. "Regret implies I made the wrong choice." "And did you?" "No." She wasn't defensive, just certain. "If he wanted me," she added quietly, "he would have chosen me publicly." Denise nodded slowly. "You deserve public love." Yes, that sentence carried weight, because private affection is not the same as visible commitment. Ronan began noticing Zariah's absence differently. Her name surfaced in hospital meetings. Her maternal initiative gained traction. He almost reached out once, scrolled to her contact, paused, then locked his phone, because pride whispers dangerous things. If she wanted me, she would have stayed. He didn't realize she had tried. At 28 weeks, Zariah stood in front of a mirror, adjusting her blouse. Her belly, unmistakable now. She touched it gently. "You are not a secret," she whispered. She never once referred to Eden as a mistake. Not privately, not internally. Language shapes identity, and she would not plant shame where life existed. One evening, Nia burst into the house, holding a tiny pink onesie. "It says, 'Strong like Mama,'" Nia announced proudly. Zariah laughed. "That's dramatic. It's accurate." Denise joined them in the living room. "You ready for this?" Denise asked softly. Zariah exhaled slowly. "I'm ready to protect her." "Protection isn't isolation," Denise reminded her gently. Zariah nodded. "I know." She wasn't trying to erase Ronan. She was trying to prevent inherited pain. That was the difference. At 32 weeks, she received a call from hospital administration. "The Whiteley Foundation is interested in co-sponsoring your maternal equity initiative." She went very still. "Decline politely," she said calmly. "Are you sure?" The administrator asked. Yes. She would not build her legacy through his family's name. Not without clarity. Not without truth. Ronan later heard about the declined sponsorship. Why would she refuse? He asked in a meeting. No one answered directly. He didn't connect the dots. Yet, at 36 weeks, contractions came unexpectedly while she was still at work. She breathed through them, finished reviewing charts, then finally allowed Marisol to insist she go home early. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling. A thought surfaced quietly. What if he never knows? The idea didn't terrify her. It saddened her. But sadness isn't always a reason to reopen doors. She rolled onto her side carefully. Eden kicked softly again. "You'll know your worth," she whispered. That was the promise. And 48 hours later, labor began fully. She drove herself to the hospital, calm, focused, prepared. She didn't expect to see him. She didn't expect fate to refuse privacy. She didn't expect the past to walk into the room in a white coat. But it did. Ronan had built influence. Zariah had built resilience. He had expanded legacy. She had expanded life. He thought he lost a relationship. She carried the consequence of his hesitation. And now, their separate growth collided, not in a boardroom, not in a gala, but in a delivery room, where image means nothing, and truth has nowhere to hide. The pregnancy had not broken her. It had clarified her. She didn't shrink. She strengthened. She didn't collapse. She anchored. And when Ronan walked into that room and saw what silence had cost, he wasn't just facing fatherhood. He was facing the woman who chose dignity over access. Time doesn't always heal. Sometimes it hardens. Sometimes it clarifies. Sometimes it waits patiently for consequences to catch up. For Zariah and Ronan, time did all three. After Eden was born, the hospital moved quietly but quickly. Birth records filed, documentation signed. Nurse Tasha kept her expression neutral, but the resemblance had already settled into memory. Dr. Leonard Hayes noticed the shift in Ronan's demeanor during rounds. He didn't ask directly. He didn't need to. Institutions sense when power dynamics change. And something had changed. Zariah remained admitted for observation. Eden slept peacefully most of the time. Aunt Denise rotated with Nia, so Zariah could rest. They didn't ask too many questions. They waited, because decisions made too quickly can reopen wounds. Ronan didn't leave the hospital that night. He walked the halls alone long after his shift technically ended. He replayed every missed opportunity, every delayed confrontation, every moment he prioritized comfort over clarity. He had thought he was balancing worlds. He had been drifting between them, and drifting cost direction. The next morning, he knocked gently on Zariah's hospital door. Aunt Denise opened it halfway. Her eyes scanned him. "You're early," she said. "I needed to talk." She stepped aside slowly. Zariah was sitting upright now, Eden asleep in the bassinet beside her. She looked tired, but steady. Ronan approached carefully. "I spoke to my mother," he said. Zariah didn't respond immediately. "And?" she asked calmly. "She admitted she turned you away." Aunt Denise's jaw tightened. Zariah's expression didn't change. "I assumed as much. I didn't know," he added quickly. "I believe that," she replied. There was no accusation in her tone, just assessment. "I should have known," he said. "Yes," she agreed softly. That honesty landed differently than anger would have. He exhaled. "I can't change what happened." "No, but I can change what happens next." She studied him. That's a sentence people say when they feel guilty. "It's not guilt," he said firmly. "It's responsibility." She held his gaze longer this time. "You understand that responsibility is daily?" "Yes." "It's not a speech." "I know." "It's not a public apology." "I know." "It's consistency." He nodded. "I'm prepared for that." She looked at Eden, then back at him. "Are you prepared to stand against your family publicly if necessary?" He didn't hesitate this time. "Yes." Denise crossed her arms. "We've heard that before." Ronan didn't flinch. "I didn't stand before. I will now." The difference wasn't in volume. It was in posture. He wasn't negotiating. He wasn't persuading. He was stating. Zariah noticed, but she didn't surrender to hope too quickly. Hope without evidence had hurt her before. Later that day, hospital administration called Ronan into a meeting. "Congratulations are in order," one board member said cautiously. Ronan didn't react to the sarcasm. "I assume you're referring to my daughter." "Yes." The word daughter sounded different now, less secret, more visible. "There may be questions," the board member continued, "about optics." "There are always questions about optics," Ronan replied calmly. "And your response?" "My personal life is not a liability." The room shifted slightly. "That depends on narrative." He leaned forward slightly. The narrative is simple. I have a daughter. The clarity unsettled them. They expected hesitation. They received resolve. Evelyn called again that afternoon. Her voice was measured. This situation requires strategy. It requires truth, Ronan replied. Truth destabilizes unnecessarily. Then it was unstable to begin with. A long pause. You're emotional, she said finally. I'm a father. Another silence. That child will complicate inheritance structures. He almost laughed. She's not a spreadsheet. You're risking more than you understand. No, he replied quietly. I understand exactly what I risked before. He ended the call. Not angrily, decisively. Back in her hospital room, Zariah received a bouquet of white lilies. No note. She didn't need one. She asked Denise to move them to the corner. They're not from him, Denise observed. No, they're from someone trying to manage the narrative. Zariah nodded. Let them try. Her peace was no longer fragile. It was fortified. When discharge day arrived, Ronan stood beside her quietly as paperwork was finalized. He didn't take over, didn't instruct staff, didn't assert influence. He waited. When the nurse handed Eden to Zariah for departure, Ronan asked gently, May I? She hesitated briefly, then handed Eden to him. He carried his daughter out of the hospital without spectacle. No announcement, no staged moment, just careful steps. Outside, Atlanta sunlight hit differently. Cars passed. Life moved. No one stopped to stare. Sometimes, life-altering shifts happen without headlines. At Denise's house, Ronan didn't enter immediately. He stood on the porch. Zariah looked at him. You don't have to come in. I know. Then why are you still here? Because I don't want to leave like I did last time. The sentence lingered, different from before. She nodded slowly. You can come in. Inside the house, the atmosphere was warmer than Buckhead ever was. Family photos, worn couches, history in laughter lines. Ronan felt the contrast immediately. This wasn't curated legacy. It was lived memory. He understood something then. He hadn't just lost a woman years ago. He had lost an entire ecosystem of belonging. Weeks passed. Ronan visited regularly, not daily at first, but steadily. He learned how to hold Eden confidently, how to soothe her when she cried, how to assemble a crib without calling staff. He showed up for pediatric appointments. He stayed quiet during family dinners, unless invited into conversation. He listened more than he spoke. Zariah watched everything, not suspiciously, carefully. Consistency builds slowly. One evening, as Eden slept between them on the couch, Ronan said quietly, I used to think power meant controlling outcomes. Zariah looked at him. What do you think now? I think it means standing firm when outcomes are uncertain. She considered. That's closer. He nodded. I can't promise perfection. I don't want perfection. I want partnership, he added. She didn't respond immediately, because partnership requires shared weight, and she had been carrying weight alone for months. Across town, Evelyn and Camille recalculated. Board members whispered. Donors speculated. But Ronan didn't retract, didn't adjust language, didn't minimize Eden's existence. He referred to her openly now. My daughter. That simple shift destabilized old expectations more than any confrontation. Zariah remained cautious. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means recalibrating trust carefully. One night she asked him, if your family demands distance again, what happens? He answered without pause. They'll have to adjust. And if they don't, then I will. That was the answer she needed years ago. But answers are only meaningful when followed by action. Time had built them differently. She built resilience. He built regret. Now they were building something new, not from infatuation, not from illusion, from truth. And truth doesn't feel romantic. One afternoon, Eden smiled for the first time. Wide, unfiltered. Ronan froze. Did you see that? He asked quietly. Zariah smiled. Yes. He looked at his daughter, then at Zariah, and for the first time in years, hope didn't feel dangerous. It felt earned. Their lives had been built separately, in pain, in pride, in silence. Now they stood at a threshold, not back where they were, but forward into something unfamiliar. And this time, he was not choosing legacy first. He was choosing them. The question now wasn't whether love still existed. It did. The question was whether love, paired with courage, could finally stand. 2 weeks after Eden's birth, Ronan received a formal request to attend an emergency board session. The subject line read, "Foundation Stability and Media Narrative." He almost smiled. Translation: "We need to know if your daughter is going to disrupt the machine." He arrived early, suit pressed, posture steady, but this time, he didn't enter the room thinking about optics. He entered thinking about Eden, and that changed everything. The boardroom felt colder than usual. Polished wood table, framed donor plaques, financial projections displayed neatly on screens. Evelyn sat at the far end, composed, unshaken, Camille beside her. Several senior investors lined the table. One cleared his throat. "Dr. Whiteley, congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Ronan replied evenly. "We were unaware of your family expansion. My daughter was born 2 weeks ago," he said calmly. A board member leaned forward. "There are reputational implications." "Such as?" Ronan asked. "You were not publicly in a committed relationship." "That is correct." "And the mother?" "Dr. Zariah Bennett." The room went quiet. They knew the name. Maternal Equity Initiative. Community presence. Increasing influence. Evelyn spoke carefully. "This creates narrative complications." "For whom?" Ronan asked. "For the Whiteley Foundation." He didn't blink. "My daughter is not a complication." "She was concealed," Camille said smoothly. "She was protected," Ronan corrected. The shift in language unsettled them. "You're emotional," one board member noted. "I'm clear," Ronan replied. Another investor folded his hands. "We are preparing a statement." "You don't need one." "We disagree." He leaned forward slightly. "No foundation statement is required to acknowledge my child." Evelyn's voice cooled. "You are being impulsive." He met her gaze directly. "No. I was impulsive when I let you define my relationships." The room stiffened. "We guided you," she said. "You interfered." Silence. Board members exchanged glances. He continued. "You turned away the mother of my child. You filtered my messages. You shaped narratives I accepted without verification." Evelyn's posture tightened. "That is an accusation. It is a fact." A board member cleared his throat awkwardly. "This is not the appropriate venue." "It is exactly the appropriate venue," Ronan said calmly. "You operate under the belief that image outweighs integrity." "I disagree." Another pause. He stood. "My daughter will not be hidden." "And Dr. Bennett?" Someone asked. He didn't hesitate. "She will be respected." The meeting ended without consensus, but something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, Ronan chose confrontation over comfort. News didn't break loudly. There were no headlines, but hospital circles are tight. Within days, it was quietly understood. Dr. Ronan Whiteley has a daughter, and he's not denying her. That alone disrupted expectation. Meanwhile, Zariah received a different kind of test. An invitation, formal, from the Whiteley Foundation. Community partnership recognition. Dinner. Location, Buckhead. She read it once, then again. Denise sat across from her. "You going?" Zariah leaned back. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether I'm walking into respect or performance." Denise nodded slowly. "Go if it's strength, not if it's spectacle." Zariah understood something clearly now. She no longer needed access. She needed alignment. Ronan called her that evening. "They've invited you," he said. "Yes. I won't attend if you don't want to." She considered that. "Will you stand beside me?" "Yes." "Not privately." "Yes." "Not cautiously." "Yes." "Not later." "Yes." There was no hesitation in his tone. That mattered. "I'll go," she said calmly. The dinner was smaller than previous galas, less extravagant, more controlled. The Whiteley estate glowed under soft lighting. Zariah stepped out of her car wearing deep burgundy this time. Hair natural, back straight, no armor needed. Ronan met her at the entrance. He didn't touch her immediately. He asked first, "May I?" She nodded. He offered his arm. Not possessively, not performatively. Partnership. Inside, conversation paused slightly. Eyes tracked. Whispers formed. Evelyn approached with polished composure. "Dr. Bennett, Mrs. Whiteley." The air held history. Evelyn's smile was practiced. "We're pleased you could attend." "I'm here for the initiative," Zariah replied calmly. "Not the legacy, not the reconciliation. The work." Ronan didn't leave her side. When donors approached, he introduced her clearly. "This is Dr. Zariah Bennett, founder of our maternal equity partnership. No softening, no minimizing, no qualifiers. Founder, not associate, not participant. Founder." The language shift mattered. Camille observed quietly from across the room. At one point, a donor asked directly, "Is it true you share a child?" Ronan answered before Zariah could. "Yes." Simple, direct, no embarrassment. The donor nodded thoughtfully. "Congratulations." No scandal, just acknowledgement. Power doesn't always explode. Sometimes it dissolves quietly. Later in the evening, Evelyn requested a brief private conversation. Ronan stayed. Evelyn noticed. This was between women. "Not anymore," Ronan replied. Zariah stood steady. Evelyn's eyes sharpened slightly. "You misunderstand our intentions." "No," Ronan said calmly. "I understand them clearly now." Evelyn turned to Zariah. "You must recognize the scale of what you're entering." Zariah met her gaze. "I've never been intimidated by scale." Evelyn held her silence longer this time, then asked quietly, "What do you want?" Zariah didn't blink. "Respect. Not marriage, not money, not inheritance. Respect." It was the one thing previously withheld. Evelyn inhaled slowly. "You've made things difficult." "No," Zariah said softly. "I've made them honest." The distinction hung in the air. Ronan didn't speak. He didn't need to. His posture communicated alignment. Evelyn looked between them. For the first time, she saw something different. Not rebellion, not infatuation. Stability. And stability cannot be managed the same way infatuation can. The dinner ended, without confrontation, without spectacle, but with recalibration. The next morning, the Whiteley Foundation website updated quietly. Maternal Equity Initiative. Lead, Dr. Zariah Bennett. Partnership acknowledgement. Whiteley Foundation. Not ownership, not branding dominance. Partnership. Language matters. Back at Denise's house that night, Zariah exhaled deeply. "That went differently," Denise said. "Yes." "You trust him?" Zariah paused. "I trust his direction." "That's not the same thing." "No, but it's a start." Eden stirred softly in her crib. Ronan sat nearby assembling a pediatric monitor carefully. No staff, no assistant, just him. That small image told Denise more than speeches ever could. The public reckoning wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was visible. And visibility changes power structures. Ronan had stepped out of management, into responsibility. Zariah had stepped into rooms once hostile. Without shrinking, Eden slept peacefully through all of it. Unaware, she had shifted legacy. But reconciliation is not a gala. It's daily choice. And the next challenge would not come from donors. It would come from trust. Because love can survive misunderstanding. But rebuilding trust requires consistency beyond performance. And this time, both of them knew performance was no longer enough. Public acknowledgement was the easy part. Daily repair was not. Because reconciliation doesn't live in gala speeches. It lives in small moments. And small moments reveal truth faster than declarations ever could. The first boundary Zariah set was simple. "You don't move into my life," she told Ronan one evening, while Eden slept between them on the couch. "You integrate into it." He nodded. "No argument, no defensiveness." "Tell me what that looks like," he said. "It looks like not overriding my routines, not correcting my parenting in public, not making decisions without asking." "Understood." "And it looks like you building your own relationship with Eden, not performing fatherhood for my approval." That landed. He didn't flinch. "I don't want to perform," he said quietly. Good, she replied. Because I'll know. The next test came a week later. Eden developed a mild fever, nothing severe, but enough to spike anxiety. Ronan arrived within 20 minutes of Zariah's call, not in a panic. Prepared, he didn't take over. He asked, "What do you need?" That question mattered. "I need you calm," she answered. He stayed calm, measured temperature, reviewed pediatric notes, sat beside Eden's crib quietly at 2 a.m. No speeches, no dramatics, just presence. At sunrise, Zariah watched him gently stroke Eden's tiny hand. He wasn't aware she was watching. That's when trust grows. When no one is looking. Across town, Evelyn adjusted strategy. She didn't attack. She observed. Power rarely confronts directly when it can wait, but waiting no longer intimidated Zariah, because Zariah no longer sought approval. She sought alignment. One afternoon, Ronan invited Zariah to tour a new hospital wing funded by the foundation. "This isn't branding," he said carefully. "It's infrastructure for maternal care." She studied the blueprints. "What role do you see me in?" "Lead advisor." She didn't respond immediately. "And autonomy?" "Yours." "And decision authority?" "Shared." She met his eyes. "That's new." "Yes." He didn't pretend otherwise. Growth doesn't erase history. It acknowledges it. The real fracture surfaced unexpectedly. It was small, which made it dangerous. During a family dinner at Denise's house, Ronan mentioned adjusting Eden's pediatrician to someone connected with the Whiteley Medical Network. He said it casually. Without thinking, Zariah went quiet. Later that night, after Denise and Nia cleared dishes, she spoke. "That's what I meant," she said calmly, "about integrating, not moving." He frowned. "I thought it was a better resource." "It might be." "Then what's the issue?" "The issue is you deciding without asking." He paused, realization settling. "I wasn't overriding you. You were assuming influence equals improvement." He exhaled slowly. "You're right." She watched him carefully. No excuses, no reframing. "You're right," he repeated. That mattered more than justification would have. Repair isn't romantic. It's repetitive. It's uncomfortable. It's humbling. Ronan began asking before offering, listening before correcting, waiting before suggesting. And gradually, the dynamic shifted. Not because she softened, because he adjusted. One evening, Eden wouldn't sleep, crying harder than usual. Zariah was exhausted from a full day at the clinic. Ronan took Eden gently. "I've got her. You have surgery at 7, Zariah reminded him. "I'll manage." He paced slowly in the dim living room, whispered nonsense phrases softly, counted seconds between breaths. Zariah woke briefly at 3 a.m. and found him still awake, still walking. That image lingered, not because it was dramatic, because it was quiet. And quiet effort builds confidence. Weeks passed. The maternal equity wing opened officially. This time, Zariah stood at the podium, not as a guest, as a leader. Ronan stood beside her, slightly behind her, intentionally. When reporters asked about their relationship, he responded simply, "We're building something rooted in accountability, not romance, not spectacle, accountability." Zariah noticed the wording. It wasn't poetic, it was accurate. Evelyn attended the opening. She didn't interfere. She didn't dismiss. She watched. When Zariah finished her speech about maternal mortality gaps in Georgia, the room applauded genuinely. Evelyn approached afterward. "You've positioned yourself well," she said carefully. Zariah smiled slightly. "I didn't position myself. I worked." Evelyn held her gaze. "You're stronger than I anticipated." "I've always been," Zariah replied softly. That wasn't arrogance. It was fact. Evelyn nodded once, not concession, recognition. Power shifting doesn't always look explosive. Sometimes it looks like acknowledgement. That night, after the event, Ronan sat beside Zariah on the porch swing at Denise's house. Eden asleep inside. "You didn't need me today," he said quietly. She tilted her head. "I never needed you to be my shield. What did you need?" "You to stand beside me." He nodded slowly. "I'm learning the difference." She studied him. "I see that." It wasn't forgiveness declared. It was progress acknowledged. The hardest conversation came unexpectedly, weeks later. "If this doesn't work," Zariah said one night while folding laundry, "Eden still has two parents." He stiffened slightly. "You're planning an exit?" "I'm planning stability." He looked at her carefully. "You still don't trust me fully." "No," she answered honestly. The honesty stung. "But I trust your effort." He absorbed that. Trust is not given in speeches. It's built in layers. And layers take time. Across the city, whispers quieted. Donors adapted. Board members recalibrated. The Whiteley Foundation updated internal policy language to emphasize partnership diversity. Small changes, but meaningful. Legacy was bending, not breaking. One quiet Sunday afternoon, as sunlight filtered through Denise's living room window, Eden laughed loud and clear. Both Ronan and Zariah froze. She laughed again, unfiltered, bright. Ronan looked at Zariah. "That's new." Yes. They watched their daughter discover joy. Without tension, without legacy weight, just laughter. And in that moment, repair felt possible, not guaranteed, but possible. The slow repair didn't fix everything. It didn't erase years. It didn't erase engineered silence, but it created something new. Choice, daily choice. To stand, to listen, to adjust, to defend, to partner. Love alone hadn't been enough before. Courage had been missing. Now courage was present. Quiet, steady, learning. And for the first time, Zariah wasn't wondering whether he would hesitate. She was watching him choose. The real test of repair isn't passion, it's consistency. And consistency doesn't shout, it shows up. The final reckoning didn't come with scandal. It came with exposure. Not exposure of secrets, exposure of character. 3 months after the maternal equity wing opened, a journalist published a feature on healthcare disparities in Georgia. The article was thorough, balanced, but one paragraph shifted everything. Internal sources confirmed that the Whiteley Foundation initially resisted Dr. Zariah Bennett's maternal initiative before ultimately restructuring leadership under public pressure. It wasn't accusatory. It wasn't sensational, but it was clear. Legacy had resisted her, then adapted, and adaptation only happened after visibility. Board members panicked quietly. Evelyn requested a private meeting with Ronan. He accepted. Inside the Whiteley Estate Library, the atmosphere was colder than it had been in years. Evelyn stood by the window. "You've allowed external narratives to define this family." "No," Ronan replied evenly. "The family defined itself. You are destabilizing generational influence." "I'm correcting it." She turned slowly. "Over a relationship? Over integrity." The distinction mattered. "This will affect inheritance structures. Then, adjust them. You speak like a man without consequence. I speak like a father." Silence stretched. "You are choosing her over legacy," Evelyn said finally. "I'm choosing honesty over control." Evelyn's composure faltered slightly. "For years, we preserved your trajectory. You preserved your image. And what is wrong with image?" "Nothing," he replied calmly, "unless it costs truth." The words settled heavily. "This isn't rebellion," he added. "It's growth." Evelyn studied her son carefully. For the first time, she saw not defiance, but independence, which is harder to contain. Later that evening, Evelyn requested to meet Zariah, not at the estate, at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in Midtown Atlanta. Zariah agreed. She arrived, composed. No hostility, no performance. Evelyn sat across from her, hands folded neatly. "I miscalculated you," Evelyn began. Zariah waited. "I assumed you were temporary." "I know. I intervened." "Yes." Evelyn inhaled carefully. "I did what I believed protected my family. And in doing so," Zariah replied gently, "you fractured it. No venom, just truth." Evelyn looked down briefly. "That child." She paused. "Eden." Zariah said, "Yes, Eden." "She shifts things. She clarifies them," Zariah corrected softly. Evelyn met her gaze. "You've built something independent of us. Yes. And you don't need Whiteley backing. No. Another silence. Then what do you want? Evelyn asked. The same question from months ago, but different now. Zariah didn't hesitate. Consistency. From whom? From everyone. Evelyn nodded slowly. That may take time. I'm patient, Zariah replied. Strength without hostility unsettled Evelyn more than confrontation ever had. The true resolution came weeks later, at Eden's naming celebration, not a christening, not a society announcement, a backyard gathering at Denise's house, neighbors, family, colleagues, community, laughter, food on folding tables, children running barefoot through grass. Ronan stood beside Zariah, not in front, not behind, beside. Evelyn arrived quietly, no entourage, no spectacle. She approached Eden carefully. May I? She asked. Zariah looked at Ronan. He didn't answer for her. She nodded. Evelyn held her granddaughter gently. For a moment, legacy felt smaller, human, personal, not strategic. Camille did not attend. That absence spoke volumes. Later that afternoon, as sunlight softened over the backyard, Ronan stepped forward slightly. I owe this community clarity, he said calmly. Conversation quieted. I failed to defend someone who deserved public respect. I allowed comfort to guide me instead of courage. He glanced at Zariah. I will not repeat that mistake. No grand declaration, no theatrical vow, just commitment. Zariah didn't rush to embrace him. She simply nodded. Because words are measured against history, and history requires proof. That evening, when guests left and quiet returned, Zariah sat on the porch steps. Ronan joined her. You didn't have to say all that, she said softly. I did. Why? Because silence built the problem. She considered that. You're different. I'm aware. She turned toward him fully. This works only if it remains honest. It will. If you hesitate again, I won't. She studied him. I believe you're trying. I am. That wasn't fairy tale reconciliation. It was grown commitment, built on consequence. Months passed. The foundation formally revised governance structures. Maternal equity funding increased. Community advisory seats expanded. Evelyn adjusted publicly, not warmly, but respectfully. Ronan and Zariah didn't rush into marriage, didn't rush into merging households. They built intentionally, shared custody openly, shared leadership, shared responsibility, and slowly, love returned. Not the infatuated version from hospital corridors, not the fragile version from gala nights, but a steadier version, one that had survived interference, one that had confronted pride, one that had endured silence. One evening, as Eden took her first unsteady steps across Denise's living room, she fell into both their arms at once. Ronan laughed. Zariah smiled. She walks toward balance, Denise said quietly. And that felt symbolic, because that's what they had finally achieved. Not dominance, not control. The final scene wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Ronan kneeling on the living room floor assembling a bookshelf. Zariah reviewing clinic notes at the table. Eden babbling between them. Peace. Earned. And the question that once echoed in a delivery room, is she mine, had transformed, not into possession, but into responsibility. And responsibility, when paired with courage, rebuilds what hesitation once broke. Love means nothing without courage. Legacy means nothing without integrity. And children deserve both.